Today we're going to be learning about the cylinder. So this is a lesson 11-7. So before we endeavor, a cylinder is a solid figure bounded by a closed cylindrical surface and two parallel planes. The volume of a cylinder is no longer 1/3 BH, it's just volume equals B times H, where B is still the area of our base. But here's the best part. The base is always going to be a circle. So if you look at our image down here, it's just a circle, it's just sort of like stretched out. So our base is a circle, which means that our area of the base is always just going to be pi r squared. Because the area of a circle is pi r squared. So if you want to think about it, your volume of a cylinder really isn't just BH, it's volume equals BH. Volume equals pi r squared times h. That is going to be the formula you're using as you solve these questions, because the volume of a cylinder is just pi r squared h. So we have the regular cylinder where we have our radius on the inside of our circle, and we have our height, which is always located on the outside. Occasionally it's drawn in on the inside like this, but just know that that's still your height. If you have an oblique cylinder, we're still going to do the exact same rules. You use Pythagorean theorem to find your height, because you can make a right triangle. Okay, let's go into some problems. For our first example, we want to find the volume of the cylinder to the nearest tenth. So that means we're going to be typing pi in our calculator. So the first thing we do is we write out our formula. Volume equals pi r squared h. So I have pi r squared h. So my volume is equal to pi. Ooh, here's the issue. If I look at my image, I'm not exactly sure what my radius is. I have my diameter of 6. So to find my radius, I just take 6 divided by 2. So my radius is 3. And my height is 4. I type this into my calculator. If you want, you can sort of simplify it by hand at first. 3 squared is 9. 9 times 4 is 36, so I have volume equals 36 pi. If the question said to leave it in terms of pi, you would leave it like this. But it says to round to the nearest tenth, so I type it in, and I get volume equals 113.1 centimeters cubed, because your volume is always measured in cubic meters. Okay, so now we go to the next one. The volume of a right cylinder is 287.8 cubic centimeters, and the height is 8.2 centimeters. What is the radius of the base to the nearest tenth? So the first thing we want to do is always write down our formula. So volume equals pi r squared h. If we take a close read of the question, it says the volume of a right cylinder is 287.8 cubic centimeters. That means everywhere I see volume, or my V, I put a 287.8. So 287.8 equals pi. The height is 8.2 centimeters. What is the radius? That means I don't know what my radius is, so I want to solve for my radius. So I'm going to make that black. So I just write out r squared and then my height of 8.2. Okay? So this is really 287.8 equals pi times r squared times 8.2. So our first step is to actually divide both sides by an 8.2 pi. Even though the 8.2 and the pi aren't attached to each other, they really are, because it's multiplication. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8.2 pi. Divide by 8.2 pi. Divide by 8.2 pi. Pi cancels, 8.2 cancels. And I should be getting 11.1719. So I get r squared equals 11.1719. You know how to get rid of a square by now. I just take the square root. And I get r equals 3.3 centimeters. And that's your final answer. Now we have our last question. Find the volume to the nearest hundredth. But if you look, I have a slant. So now we have to figure out how to find our height. And we went over this. We are going to use Pythagorean theorem because if you zoom in on this image, you actually have a right triangle. I have a right triangle right here. So I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find my missing side length. So x squared plus 11 squared equals 14 squared. 11 squared is 121. 14 squared is 196. I get x squared equals 75 because I take away 121 from both sides. Take the square root, and I get x equals 8.66. So this is going to be my height for the question. Good, so now I have my height. My volume formula is pi r squared h. Volume equals pi times my radius squared times my height of 8.6. If I look at my image, here's the issue. I'm not exactly sure what my radius is. So if I go to my picture, my diameter is 11. So to find my radius, I just do 11 divided by 2, which is 5.5. So I'm really just doing 5.5 squared. Looks like an 8. I type this into my calculator. Don't forget your second sex. I type this in my calculator, and I get volume equals 822.99 inches cubed. And that is your final answer. So I'm going to zoom out so you can get a full picture of the page. That is the cylinder. So the next thing you have to do is, if you're stuck, watch the video one more time. Make sure you answer the independent practice questions. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email myself or Miss Kimmick. Thanks and have a great, great day.